St. Mark, the 11th chapter.
Glory to you, Lord.
When they were approaching Jerusalem at Bethphage and Bethany, near the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent two of his disciples and said to them, "Go into the village ahead of you, and immediately as you enter it, you will find tied there a colt that has never been ridden. Untie it and bring it. If anyone says to you, 'Why are you doing this?' just say this, 'The Lord needs it, and will send it back here immediately.'" They went away and found a colt tied near a door outside in the street. As they were untying it, some of the bystanders said to them, "What are you doing untying the colt?" They told them what Jesus had said, and they allowed them to take it. Then they brought the colt to Jesus and threw their cloaks on it, and he sat on it. Many people spread their cloaks on the roads, and others spread leafy branches they had cut in the fields. Then those who went ahead and those who followed were shouting, "Hosanna! Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the coming kingdom of our ancestor David. Hosanna in the highest heaven." Then he entered Jerusalem and went into the temple. And when he had looked around at everything, as it was already getting late, he went out to Bethany with the 12. The Gospel of the Lord. So today's worship service is bursting at the seams full. We begin with all the hoopla of the original March for Our Lives as Jesus parades into Jerusalem. And we close out our worship with Jesus hanging, as the children pointed out, dead on a cross. The stories we hear contain a cornucopia of emotions, beginning with jubilation, bewilderment, excitement, and hope, which rapidly disintegrate into betrayal, cruelty, chaos, emptiness, and misery. And within these stories, we encounter a myriad of characters, everyone from Jesus to Jesus' disciples, the bystander, the crowds that gather to cheer Jesus on, and then to Pilate and the elders and scribes, Barabbas, the prisoner, to Simon of Cyrene, and the soldiers who mock and spit on Jesus. And, of course, his family and friends, who gather at the foot of the cross for his last breaths. These final few days present us with a cross-section of Jesus' life, beginning with the height of adoration, descending to the depths of hell. And we all know this story. We know how it begins, and we know how it ends. I cannot tell the story better than the gospel writers. There is nothing new to add. There is no new fresh twist to present. But what I will ask us to do today is to lean into the story a bit more. I know that lean in has become an expected cliche or a predictable response to circumstances since Sheryl Sandberg's book of the same title has become part of our common vocabulary. But the notion of leaning in essentially means striving to be fully present to whatever circumstances we find ourselves in. And so the circumstance we find ourselves in this morning is we are witnesses to the murdering of an innocent man. So lean into that. Now, I'm fully aware that most of us recoiled from that statement. See, I could recount doctrine and theology to make this more palatable. And I could use prophecies to rationalize and explain these last few days. But then all I do is control the moment by sanitizing it into words that are flattened onto pages of an ancient storybook, thereby reducing amazement to acceptance, resistance to recourse, and disbelief to discussion. And I'm certain that no human, especially God incarnate, needs to be murdered so that we can have civil discourse on atonement theology. If you don't know what that is, don't worry. Jesus wasn't too hip on theologizing his whole life, death, and resurrection either. And the confession I will make to you all this morning on that is I don't know what to do with all this. I don't really get it. I don't even know how exactly to explain to you that God decided that this was the way he was going to save the world. But I'm not sure I'm supposed to get it. And so today I invite us to hold space for ambiguity, admit uncertainty and doubt, looking at our disappointment and confusion and disenchantment as we lean into the story without having to understand the whys. So as I try to enter the story, What I realize, whether it's for the Palm Sunday procession or the crucifixion on the cross, or even the ways that Jesus endeavors to work in the course of my own life, is that I'm probably standing on the sidelines. This is the part of the harsh truth that I must face when I really lean into the story. Because selfishly, I'd rather not witness a murder in order for the whole world to be set right again. I'd rather not fall desperately in love with Jesus just to have him snatched away, or him not meet my expectations. I realize that this Jesus story is one that I'm not sure I really want to participate in. I mean, I'd like to believe that I'd be one of the disciples who went to get the donkey, or I'd rather be strewing palms on his path. I'd even prefer the distinction of carrying his cross on my shoulders. But somehow I know I'd be a bystander, watching from a distance, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Because the emotional investment with Jesus is so high. I dare not join his parade too casually. Now, I will also say that the only consolation I take in my bystander status is I don't think I'd be screaming and yelling for his crucifixion. Although the brokenness of humanity surprises me sometimes, so you just never know. And I also don't think I'd spit on his faith or celebrate his death. I doubt I'd allow myself to get that close to loss and grief and death. I know about myself. I know that there are all kinds of truths I'd rather not see. What keeps me on the sidelines of the parade and the reasons I distance myself from the cross is I've been hurt enough by love and trust. Most days I'm not sure I want to risk it. I am reticent to hope that hard, even when I want to, even when I believe the story, even when I know that life always begins again. But I also know that I don't want to just watch my life go by. I don't want to just watch Jesus go by. I don't want to always be a spectator. Now, I want you to hear me clearly. Despite my sheepishness, I know this story to be true. It is what keeps me proclaiming it week after week. It is the story that brings me back to life. Being a bystander allows for some amount of anonymity, mostly I think because I don't want Jesus to see my weakness, unfaithfulness, and doubt. But still, when I become convinced that the whole world has conspired against me, I know that truly the whole world did scheme against God. And when I feel utterly alone and desperate, I know that God prayed alone in the garden many a night and was abandoned on a cross. And when I feel like death is winning, I know that God never believed that was possible. So my lean-in realization is that I'm a reluctant bystander, and I need Jesus to drag me into the joys and the sorrows of life. Otherwise, my desire for security will let me settle for humdrum, keeping Jesus on the margins of my life. And so I have to come here, and I have to remind myself of God's story. I have to hear it again and again, even if I know it like the back of my hand. Because otherwise the story I'd write isn't the truth, or at least it's not the whole truth. Now, for all of us, there are things that we would all kill to not see. In ways that I cannot explicate for you, where you see yourself in today's story is your story. I mean, maybe you're hardworking Simon, or maybe you're a faithful disciple, maybe a devout chief priest, or a prisoner of your own making like Barabbas. Maybe you would have plunged the nails into his hands, or maybe you would have clung desperately to the cross. Maybe you're just a donkey doing what you're told. I can't answer that for you. But I do know that this is not only the disciples' story, or Pilate's story, or Simon's story, or even just Jesus' story. It's ours. And the soldiers in the story remind us that the cross changes everything, when all they can utter as the curtain falls is, truly this man was God's son. Truly. Truly, there is something to this story that we can't comprehend. You may not be able to imagine or understand how Jesus fits into the intricacies of your life. I already admitted to you that I can't quite explain it, but maybe that's because only God can carry us from the cross through the empty tomb to the promise of the resurrection. Nobody else will make you that promise. So lean into your life, into the void, into the emptiness that fills your heart, into the thoughts which constrict your ability to think and even breathe. Lean hard into those. And lean into the giggles and the beauty of innocence, into an outstretched hand that wants to take you dancing, or into orange-kissed clouds that close out the day and promise you that tomorrow always comes. Lean softly into those, because it's in those places that he will pull you all the way into the story. Jesus marched and died for you and me, exactly as we are, not some improved version of ourselves or some better character in the story. We are who God came to save. And no matter what Pilate thinks, heck, no matter what I think on some days, nothing, absolutely nothing, can stop the story from being written over and over again.